For nearly 2 decades, you've turned to Illegal Curve Hockey as your destination for the latest news, audio, and analysis regarding the Winnipeg Jets, Manitoba Moose, and all things hockey in Manitoba. Join Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, and Ezra Ginsburg as a special edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good evening, Winnipeg. Good evening, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this evening in City Place, as well as on all of our social media platforms, we say good evening, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve pregame show. Along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel, here for the next 90 minutes, getting you set for tonight's monumentally important Game 5 between the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues. From a 2-0 lead to consternation among Winnipeg Jets fans, tonight's game is certainly a tipping point between the Jets and the Blues in this best-of-7 series. The Jets looking to rebound from what has been 2 terrible performances. No sugarcoating that. 2 terrible performances in St. Louis, looking to get back to the winning ways that they have found on home ice. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Great to be here in City Place, second floor food court. Come check us out. Come join us for the next 90 minutes as we get you set for the Jets and the Blues.
What's up, boys? As you mentioned, Drew, great to be back here at City Place Food Court, our home away from home. Obviously, Boston Pizza as well as our home away from home. And as you mentioned, this game is monumentally important. Some people are calling it a season-defining game. Some people are calling it a franchise-defining game. Whatever you want to call it, it's a huge game. Whoever wins tonight, there's a good chance that team will end up winning the series. Doesn't guarantee you're going to win the series. Right. And one thing that the Jets obviously have going for them tonight, boys, is no road team has won a game in this series yet, right? The only series that is the case. So obviously the whiteout crowd is going to be a huge boost for the Jets tonight, and they're going to be loud. But I have a feeling, Dave, that this crowd is going to be a little bit more nervous than they were in games 1 and 2.
I think that's fair, Ezzy, but I also would have to say that I think there's, the players are looking for that extra boost, and they're going to get it. And look, there's no bigger boost than adding number 13, Gabriel Velarde, to this lineup. And of course, we weren't expecting to see Nikolai Ehlers yesterday. The big attention was going to be on number 13 to see whether he was ready to go and was skating with his usual line mates along on that top line. Right. And then, of course, the extra bonus was seeing Nikolai Ehlers in a regular jersey, which I didn't take anything too much from that, of course, because he was skating on his own, but with strength and conditioning coach Jake Wolf. But seeing Gabriel Velarde return to the lineup, that's huge, of course. And so that to me is the focus. And that's why I think there's going to be such a big boost for this Jets club, because we've been talking about it for a while. And look, they didn't have Gabriel Velarde when they won those 2 games. So it's not all about him. But if you're looking for some way to kind of change the narrative around this team, you now have Gabriel Velarde, and Scott Arniel talked about it a little bit at morning media availability. He's talked about that idea of we look a little bit more than what we did look like before. Sure. With Alex Iafallo now going down into the Nikolai Ehlers spot, with Nino Niederreiter reuniting with that identity line of Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. And the fourth line's been good, regardless of who's been on that. However it's been constructed, they've been good, consistent. So that to me is going to be the biggest kind of focus right now, boys, is first of all, how big an impact Gabriel Velarde has specifically on that power play, but also in the game throughout the course of the hockey.
You're getting a top 6 forward back into your lineup. And it, of course, has been worth noting, and we've talked about it, that the Jets are without 2 top 6 forwards in this series, minus Velarde, minus Ehlers. Now you get one of those guys back. And this is a Winnipeg Jets team that certainly needs any sort of emotional lift, any sort of boost that they can get, given how the 2 games in St. Louis went. Just catastrophic.
Well, we should be clear. The first period of the game 4 was very good. Would you not say?
Yes, first period of game 4.
Even the first 5 minutes of the second period.
You're right. So the final 35 minutes of game 4. But most people have forgotten about the first 25 minutes, given how bad the last 35 was. So your Winnipeg Jets team, you need a boost however you can find it, wherever you can get it from. And, Gabe Velarde himself said, look, I'm not going to be Superman. I'm not going to be able to come in single-handedly, lift our team to heights, that they haven't seen before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play my game. I'm going to be as effective as I can be. I'm going to be another option, another weapon, another
just tool in the toolbox for Scott Arniel, for the Winnipeg Jets, for Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele on that line. And to your point, Dave, everything else it does, the trickle-down effect of bringing Gabe Vilardi back into the lineup.
Yeah, and we already mentioned the power play guys. Like, everybody knows the numbers. 2 for 12, 16%. The power play has to be better. I'm sure we're going to get into the special teams a little bit, along with, going over goaltending and the forward lines. And
no shortage
like
of storylines to talk about ahead of this game.
I was going to say an hour and a half might not be enough for the pregame show today, boys, but you're absolutely right, Drew. It's not just the power play. It's the pressure that he can take off of Scheifele and Connor themselves, and the pressure that they can take off the other two lines. And like Dave said, Nino Niederreiter obviously played the majority of the season with Adam Lowry and Mason Appleton. That's where he's best suited for in a third line role. And then obviously it makes a lot of sense that you move Alex Iafallo on the left side, but we can't get away from the lack of secondary scoring here, guys. Like, obviously Gabe Vilardi is going to help out that top line, and hopefully he's going to get a power play, preferably in the first period. But Nemesnikov, Perfetti, they've got to be better. Iafallo is now on that line, so that line's got to contribute. Obviously, no points for Nemesnikov or Niederreiter so far through 4 games, right? So they've got to be better. And we all know which player for the Jets has to be at his best, and that's Connor Hellebuck, right? We haven't even mentioned him yet. He obviously has not played well in the first 2 games, and I think we expect big things. He typically responds from a poor performance with a much better performance, even though we didn't see that in Game 4, but he was certainly saying all the right things, Dave, a couple days ago after practice.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. That was the unfortunate incident where I got there a little bit late, so I had the audio from one of our colleagues, but I only had about 2 minutes of video, and so I posted it because I'm like, okay, it's interesting what he had to say.
One job.
Well, I mean,
you have one job.
I would agree with you, but I wasn't anticipating they were going to let us into the room right away. Anyways, the point is that it was just funny, though, because a lot of folks were like, well, the video's frozen. I'm like, no. And I put a disclaimer there saying it's not frozen. It's just that it's audio for the first 3 minutes, then it's video. But anyways, the point is that, as he's right, he was...
Hang on, let me interrupt you for a second. The folks here who just walked by us at City Place, these are some great outfits. I got to give you folks props. These are some of the best whiteout outfits that we've seen so far through the playoffs.
That signed Thomas Steen jersey's beauty. I love that.
They got their Jets jerseys on. They got Jets. They got these custom-made sort of not quite cowboy hats, but they say "Go Jets, go." They got a jet actually on the top of the hat. These are some good outfits. So at least and the hat even lights up. Oh, wow, now we're talking. I got to give you folks props that are here watching us at City Place.
Are you guys going to be in the building, or are you going to the whiteout? Are you going to be at the game? Okay, all right. Well, hopefully our photographer will catch you at some point.
We'll try and get our photographer to snap a photo of you guys tonight. There you guys go.
And also, guys, you don't have to stay there. You guys can just proceed on if you want.
Yeah, they don't.
Okay, they're going to watch us. What are you talking about? They have to stay here until puck drop watching us.
Well, that's fine. But anyways, getting back to your original point, Ezzy, about Connor Hellebuck. I mean, there's no question he has to be better, and collectively the team has to be better. They have to defend better. They have to do what they did all year long, which is make the lanes available that he knows. Okay, the shot's coming from here, not from there. And there's interesting stats. I know so many of the goalie gurus have been conducting a lot of business in Winnipeg, Ezzy, because there's been a lot to talk about. But again, they have to make his life easier, but he has to be able to make those kind of routine stops, or if there's a play in tight, not give up those juicy rebounds. So, I mean, I think it's a collective. This is a team game. He wants to be known as the best goalie in the world. He's considered going to win the Vezina, likely could win the Hart. You have to be able to show it. And again, just to be clear, like when people talk about pressure, there was a hell of a lot of pressure on him in the Four Nations. He was able to play fine. Like, it wasn't as if he was bad in the Four Nations. Yeah. So it's not as if playing on a big stage is overwhelming for him. It's just a function of this team needs to play better, and he needs to play better.
Well, there's no dispute, to your point there, Dave. I mean, there's no disputing that it was all systems failures for the Winnipeg Jets in games 3 and 4, including Connor Hellebuck. But, to expect, it's one thing if it's a Tuesday night in February against San Jose. Maybe you can have an all systems failure when it comes to your defense and your forwards, and your goalie can bail you out with 50 saves or something like that. You don't see that very often in the playoffs where a goalie, Nikolai Habibulin in 1996.
Don't tell Darcy Kemper that.
Yeah, Darcy. Well, I mean, Darcy Kemper did everything he could, but ultimately it was too little for him in LA and Edmonton. And Edmonton now has a 3-2 series lead there. But it's Connor Hellebuck incumbent on him being better, but also so much so I agree that the players in front of him, the front of the net was a no-go zone for the Winnipeg Jets opponents all regular season long. They need to find a way to get back to that type of hockey where the Blues just don't have the possession and the zone time in front of Connor Hellebuyck. Go ahead, Dave.
I'm just going to read this because this is from Jason Greger talking about, he had Steve Alaked on as they have 9 high glove. They've shot high glove 9 times and they've scored 8 goals. High blocker, they have shot 11 times and have 3 goals. I mean, those are telling numbers.
Well, so the book is out. I mean, every goalie has
but the book is out. The book's been out for a while.
Of course. The difference is they've been able to get those shots through, and they've been able to be in a position where they've been able to get those opportunities in a high danger spot.
No, absolutely. And, just sticking with Connor Hellebuyck before we talk about the defense in front of him here, like, I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that he's going to be better. Like, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to have a goose egg, but I mean, you doubt Connor Hellebuyck, boys, at your own peril, right? Like, he's proven it time and time again. In the playoffs, obviously, his numbers have not been as good as they have been in the regular season, but I certainly think that he has it in him to be better. And again, we'll wait and see what happens, guys. I mean, I still think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I keep saying that, and then we've only really had one low scoring game in the first 4 games, right?
Dancing Gabe thinks it's going to be a 5-3 game for the Jets, just so he told us that before the game was on.
Well, and I can see that as well. Obviously, guys, like, it goes back to what we said before. The Jets are back home. They're going to get a huge boost from the home whiteout crowd. They're going to get a huge boost, obviously, having number 13 back on that top line with Scheifele and Connor. But, I mean,
what they need a huge boost in is zone time. Offensive zone time. That's where they've been struggling, for a lot of this series. Even the 2 games that, the third periods in games 1 and 2, those were fantastic periods of hockey for the Winnipeg Jets. But you haven't seen the extended zone time that was so synonymous with the Winnipeg Jets during this regular season. And I think that's something that they obviously, Scott Arneal's talked about it. You've heard that as something the Jets are trying to focus on, cycling the opponent, forechecking, not letting Binnington get the dump in and get a quick pass up have been issues for the Winnipeg Jets so far in this series. And that they just have to be a little bit smarter with their approach to their play, I think, in the Blues zone, in their offensive zone. And that's going to help make Connor Hellebuyck's life a lot easier as a result as well.
Absolutely. What you're talking about is the Jets need to push the pace, as opposed to letting the Blues dictate the pace on them. Right?
I'd agree with that.
This is all relative, right? Like, Justin Bourne had an article. I'm not sure if everybody read it. I know Dave probably read it, talking about the zone breakouts.
I thought it was really
right? And this relates to zone time, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Jets are spending too much time in their own zone, simply put, right? Yes, there are those little details in front of Connor Hellebuyck that the defense and the forwards have to take care of. They have to make sure that less shots are getting through. That's one thing. We saw that on the Tyler Tucker goal. Obviously, Tyler Tucker's not going to play tonight. He's injured. We should mention, for those who don't know yet, Ryan Suter is going to replace him, the wily veteran. We believe.
Well, it's likely to be Ryan Suter from all accounts.
And he played game 1,
right?
For those who don't.
And I think that actually, he wasn't great in game 1. Let's be perfectly honest. And he's not as physical as Tyler Tucker's been in this series. So I do think that change on the Blues back end, and now we're talking about a third pairing change. So it's not, it's not a huge storyline here.
But the Jets do have last change, so you can take advantage of that more than you would on the road.
Absolutely. I think that Tyler Tucker has definitely outplayed Ryan Suter so far in this series. Suter only playing that 1 game, but Tucker was noticeable. Look, he had the game-winning goal in game 4, and he's got something like 12 or 14 body checks in the other games total. So he's been making an impact for the Blues, and now he's not an option for Jim Montgomery on the back end for tonight's game.
Well, and it goes back to what we were talking about before, right, guys? Like, this being a possession game, a possession battle. Well, you also have to match the physicality, right? Like, this series is number 1 of the 8 series when you combine all the hits.
Yeah.
I think it's 350 hits or something like that? Like, it's ridiculous. It's obviously the type of hockey that
Braden
we like.
Shen's number alone, has he?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the Shen brothers combined.
There's a reason why Braden Shen keeps taking maintenance days.
But the Jets, to our point, they have to be better breaking out of their own zone. They have to be better at sustaining more pressure. And again, sustaining pressure is something you hear ad nauseum on hockey broadcasts. But it's, to Drew's point, you have to have these waves of offense that we haven't seen enough of. We've seen little spurts, but you want to see 2 good shifts. You want to see the Scheifele line have a good shift. If they don't score, you want to see the Nemestikov line have a good shift. You want to see the Lowry line have a good shift. You've had way too much one and done, a good shift here, a good shift there, and a good period here, a good period there. They need to go back to the type of hockey they were playing when they beat St. Louis in early April, when they beat Dallas, on the road, when they beat Vegas on the road, when they put together a 60-minute complete effort where they were playing their type of hockey the whole way, not just one period, not just two periods, the whole way. And that's the type of effort I expect from the Jets. I really do. Again, we have no idea what's going to happen here tonight, right? That's why they play the games. But I think the Jets know how high the stakes are. You heard Cole Perfetti talking about it earlier today. Yeah. You heard Niederreiter talking about today. They know the importance of this game. They know they have to be better. That's what you've heard all week long from the Jets, that they know it's not just the top line, it's not just the second line. This is going to be a team game, because thus far through 4 games, the Blues, let's be honest, have been playing a better team game.
Well, you talk about extended zone time and shifts in the opponent's zone. Really, the only extended zone time that I can think of, where the Jets were able to cycle St. Louis and really get them running around in their own zone, led to a goal in Game 4, the opening goal, the Kyle Connor goal. Yeah. That came after the Jets hunted pucks efficiently, knocked down some clearing attempts. I believe they even were able to almost begin a line change, and that's why Perfetti was on the ice with Scheifele and Connor in that instance. Iafallo went off because they were cycling through a line. They were going to try and get a line change in. That's really the only time in that entirety of Game 4 that I can remember that happening, Dave. That's something we saw more frequently from the Winnipeg Jets. You have to go and take advantage of those opportunities, and that's going to just trickle down. The trickle-down effect of that is going to be huge all throughout your team, all throughout your roster, and definitely should assist your goaltender as well.
Yeah, this Jets team collectively needs to be better than what we've seen they need to play their best game in the series. Quite frankly, and they need to get the crowd into it early. They need to get on the puck early. They need to take advantage. They need to get on the body early. An early body check by, I would imagine the Lowry line starts to really try and enforce some heavy physicality to really kind of set that tone to get the crowd into it, because you're not going to score a goal 10 seconds in. They'll score a goal 10 seconds in. So
8 seconds.
So what you need to do is you need to do something that's going to really be able to be, like I said, a tone setter. And that line now is back to being big and heavier with Nino Niederreiter on it. So, okay, what are you guys good at? And Nino Niederreiter spoke today. He knows he needs to be better. But like I said, you need to just get going. And one of the things that Cole Perfetti talked about was just how good the crowds have been, both here in Winnipeg, but also in St. Louis, and how difficult it can be to play in front of a crowd like that, and how good it is to play in front of this crowd. And I know folks can go back and say, oh, the whiteout crowd didn't do anything for the Jets last year or the year before. That's not incorrect. But the fact of the matter is that
it's also not something you can quantify easily.
For sure. But ultimately, you've got a team that had 2 wins at home to start this series. And again, if you go back to that formula,
to your point, hold serve at home for the remainder of this series, and you're going to win the series.
That's right. And ultimately, now you don't want to have to come back to Winnipeg to play Game 7. Of course, you want to be able to change that narrative, Drew. Once the series does switch back to Missouri for Game 6 on Friday.
I think Jets fans will settle for changing the narrative of the Jets can never win a game after they lose a game, because that has to, they have to get rid of that narrative before you can get to.
That's only 6 years old. Drew. You're living in the past, man.
Know.
Anyways, the fact is, though, that the one thing that we've seen, whether it was getting punted from the playoffs last year and this team coming back and saying we have a new mantra, we have a 10, 5, 10, 15%, let's get better. We saw a team that cares. And again, like I said, I'm not going to use the Ehlers and Velarde absences, because again, you won 2 games without them. So you can't when you lose say, well, of course they're missing 50 goals. But as I said, this team has collectively responded. They have not gone into a long tail spin. Now, again, we can't ignore the fact that St. Louis is a really good team. And St. Louis is, like the Jets, we know that they're the hottest team coming out of the 4 nations. But again, if you look back to January, this Jets team it's not a mirage. And I understand the folks are like, well, Hellebuck this and Hellebuck that. I was joking with our media brethren today, because I said, I don't know in a world where Eric Comrie would be lamented by not being named the starter for Game 5. If folks remember, and I'm not saying everyone, of course, but if folks remember, I felt like we were on the defense team of Eric Comrie because people were questioning his value as a backup. And I was like, well, he can't score goals and they're not giving him any run support, but he's been good when he's in the net, right, guys? And then also, Logan Stanley, folks were apoplectic, like Logan Stanley. And I thought to myself, wow, boy, the world has really flipped upside down when Logan Stanley and Eric Comrie are the guys that people are mad about. But it's the passion of Arkin. People care.
The guys that people are clamoring for in the lineup is what you mean.
That's what I mean.
After Game 4, you're right. And there was never any chance that Connor Hellebuck wasn't going to be the starting goalie. And I think that I agree with the move, and that Logan Stanley should be in lineup over Hayden Fleury, after Hayden Fleury's performance, and no disrespect to Fleury, but you go with sort of what has gone well with your team so far in this series. And that has been a pairing of Logan Stanley and Luke Schenn. It's been better than Fleury and Schenn. But Schenn needs to be better. I mean, the number of Winnipeg Jets that need to be better after game 3 and 4 is a long list of players. And they all know that. And they've all said so. They've all said, yes, from top to bottom, we need to be better. And they're pointing their fingers not at their teammates, but at themselves, saying, I will be better. And you and I, and then another guy says the same thing. Talk, of course, between two games, or the 48 hours between games, the talk is unbelievably cheap at that point in time. You need to see it on the ice. But I do think that the Jets having that last change and having the opportunity to dictate the matchups that they weren't able to do in St. Louis is going to be an advantage for them, as we saw in games 1 and 2.
Absolutely. And it goes back to what we were talking about when we talked about Connor Hellebuck. He's got to be better, obviously. If he's not better, Jets don't have much of a chance to beat the Blues if they're playing similar to the way they played in games 3 and 4, right? But this is a team. They have to get out of this as a team, Dave, right? Like this is a game where you're going to notice everything, right? Like everything's going to be heightened, right? And whether it's the second line, whether it's the third line, whether it's, like Drew said, whether it's the third D pair, you can point to certain areas of the team and say that these guys need to be better. And that's why it goes back to what I said. Gabe Vilardi, hopefully the Jets get an early power play and Vilardi scores, or he at the very least, is in on the scoring play. But I think he's also going to help them at 5-on-5. And that's one thing, right, that the Jets haven't shown their best at 5-on-5. And that's, I think, a sign of optimism, or a potential sign of optimism, I should say, for Jets fans, that have the Jets really played their best yet? I don't think we've seen the best of the Jets yet in this series. Obviously, down the stretch, we talked about some of the games, whether it's St. Louis or the win against Dallas, or the win, or even going back to late March, that shutout win over the New Jersey Devils, I hate to say. But, I mean, we haven't seen that best out of the Jets. And hopefully, for Jets fans' sake, we're going to see it starting tonight.
You're right. You haven't seen them perform like they had, like when they were at their best during the regular season. Where they were dominant. You haven't seen any. And
sorry, Drew, I was just going to say, that's a testament to the St. Louis Blues. This Blues team is good. They've played well. Like, that part of it is the way the Blues have played the Jets, and they've found a way to get under their skin. Like, the thing with the Blues is, during the regular season, guys, they were one of the most physical teams. So it's not like the Blues just decided, oh, okay, we're going to be physical against the Jets. Like, whether that's Braden Schenn, whether that's Bolduc, whether that's Colton Parayko, like they've got Toropchenko, like they've got big boys on this team. Right. And that's something that, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be a factor in this game, that they're going to have to match that physicality. And look, Logan Stanley, we saw him with the big hit on Jordan Kyrou. I believe that was game 2, right? Or was that game 1? I thought that was game 2 or game 1.
Yeah.
But
one of the home games.
But you'd like to see like a guy like Logan Stanley have that type of impact. Yeah. Doesn't mean he has to have a Dustin Byfuglien type of hit, Dave, but he's in the lineup for a reason. And it's not to score goals, right? It's to play a physical brand of hockey.
I want to see the Jets dictate the flow of the game, which is something that we've really only seen in the 2 third periods on a home ice, Dave. Game 1 and game 2, the third periods were where the Jets were at their best, were dictating the flow, dictating the course, and really had that sort of anaconda vice on the St. Louis Blues. And as a result, they had an inability to generate anything. I want to see that earlier in a contest. I want to see, you mentioned that you expect, or wouldn't be surprised that if it's Adam Lowry's line out there with Niederreiter and Appleton to start the game. I talked about this on game 4. Adam Lowry, to me, again, not necessarily on the score sheet, because that would be unexpected. You can't rely on him to all of a sudden become an offensive dynamo. But you can ask him to make his presence better known. And he has been, in my books, AWOL through a lot of the first 4 games. So he is a guy that I'm looking to set the tone for the Jets early on in this contest. Again, lay a body check. Prove that you're not going to get bullied by the Blues, because frankly, I think the Blues have bullied the Winnipeg Jets a little bit through the first 4 games, especially the games in St. Louis, where the Jets wilted in the face of the Blues' physicality.
Well, I mean, look, what are we talking about with this Jets team is that they're deep. And they can roll 4 lines at you. So, I mean, that's one of the things you're going to have to see. I agree with you, Drew. I mean, Adam Lowry, and I wonder how much that Braden Schenn hit when he just got, I think it was in game 2. And by the way, to Chris, thanks to Chris in the chat, confirmed the Logan Stanley hit was in fact in
the
game
games
2.
tend to blend together a little bit at this stage.
Well, guys, when there's 5 days between games, that tends to happen.
If they both blend together and we're so old that we forget at the same time, it's a real
Yeah.
difficult combination.
Oh no, we're
there.
definitely going senile for sure.
two games in 8 days, it'll do that to you. You forget those games that were weeks ago,
Right.
not necessarily weeks. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, look, you want to see that Adam Lowry is going to be able to set that tone, and that's why I said I would be surprised if he doesn't start, because I think you want to kind of do that. They're your heaviest line. They're the ones who are going to make that kind of impact. If they go with Scheifele, they go with Scheifele. We'll see. I mean, again, that's the beauty of having last change, is that you can get the matchups you want. And in this series, that's been critical, because I think that look, Jim Montgomery is a heck of a good coach, and so he is able to adjust. And
I would say he's out coaching Scott Arniel so far.
Again, like I said, we'll see. But I mean, again, I want to do the post mortem when the series is over, and we'll be able to decide that. But for me, I again, like I said, any coach who can take over a team with 2 months to go in the season, and make, as Jeremy Rutherford told us on our show 6 weeks ago, make the kind of adjustments that he did, have the team buy in the way that he did, and then of course have the team go on the run that they did. That guy's a hell of a good coach. So you have to credit what he's doing, and whether he makes a season-long adjustment or an in-series adjustment. To your point, Drew, that is one of the things that Scott Arniel is going to have to also adjust. And that's one of the things he talked about. He said, when he was asked today, he said, well, by Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press, would you have preferred that this series started, kind of with more regularity? Because that's one of the things that Cole Perfetti talked about. He wishes they were playing every second game.
Sure. It's not easy for players who've been programmed to play 3 and 4 nights, 4 and 6 nights, 6 and 8, to all of a sudden get no games in the span of 8 days.
Right. And one of the things that Scott Arniel was talking about was the fact that he said, look, the advantage, he said, I would have said this after game 2, but now after game 4, where we are now at a 2-2 series, I appreciate having a little more time to game plan. So he would, of course, elaborate on what those changes are going to be. For us, he didn't want to show his hand, as he. Right. But the point is that the expectation I would have is that you will see adjustments that this team has made to be able to get that type of zone time that they weren't getting the last couple of games.
And some of those matchups, sorry, I was going to say, Drew, like and I don't have the exact shift by shift numbers to support this here, but in games 1 and 2, we saw a lot of number 1 line versus number 1 line, right? We saw the Scheifele line against the Blues top line of Robert Thomas, Buchnevich, and Snuggerud. Jake Neighbors was on there a little bit, but Thomas.
So game 1, Neighbors was up there, and Snuggerud was on the second line. Then they flipped for game 2 and onwards.
Does Scott Arniel tonight, guys, want the Scheifele line to be matched up more against Oscar Sundqvist, Texier, and Bolduc? I think the simple answer would be yes to that, right? You certainly don't want them up against the Braden Shen line with Kyrou and Neighbors. That line's been great. So are you going to see more of the Lowry, Niederreiter, Appleton line up against that top line? Like, these are the types of, line combinations, matchups within a game where Arniel has the advantage now that he can get those preferable matchups, right? Like, that's what I'm looking at, because I think you can make a strong argument that the Thomas Buchnevich Snuggerud line has outplayed the Scheifele, Connor, Iafallo, now Scheifele, Connor, Velarde line. And that's why I think Velarde is going to help this out here. And again, we could go up and down the lineup and we could say, well, the Jets' second line has been outplayed by the Shen, Kyrou, Neighbors line. Well, that's obvious, because that line hasn't produced a lot of offense, without the exception of Cole Perfetti, right, guys? So, I mean, these are all things to keep in mind. And obviously, we're expecting Scott Arniel to exploit some of those better matchups. Tyler Tucker, as mentioned, isn't going to be in the lineup. Ryan Suter, we expect to be on that third pair. So hopefully you can get, the top line, the second line against that bottom D pair at certain times in the game, right, Dave? It doesn't always work out like that. But, I mean, this game is going to be hotly contested. I don't think there's any reason to believe that, this is going to be a one-sided game. Not to say that the Jets can't win this game 4-1 or 5-2. I'm not saying that. But I I think be the same. We've seen 4 games of this hockey.
You don't expect to see St. Louis do to Winnipeg what they did during games 3 and 4.
No, and I mean, Winnipeg obviously has the ability. We saw that in the first period, where they can dictate the play. They have the more shot attempts. They have the more high danger chances. Everything like that, right? But I mean, I think what we've seen, guys, is this is going to be battles all over the ice. You have to tie up a stick. I mean, we're seeing in game 4, we saw pucks off of Neil Pionk's butt and pucks off of skates and everything like that. Obviously, Dave mentioned earlier all the tip goals. Like, the Jets have to respond to what the type of hockey the St. Louis Blues have been playing and play their type of hockey and get some greasy goals as well.
It'll be important. The game time is about an hour and a half away. I know what they say, but it's probably closer to an hour and 45 minutes away. We're live. This is the Illegal Curve pregame show. We're here at City Place, second floor, food court. Jets fans walking all around us, grabbing a bite to eat, grabbing a drink, getting ready to head into the arena, getting ready for Game 5 between the Jets and the Blues. Our good friend from the Athletic, Murat Atesh, is walking towards us.
That's Murat is looking handsome.
He is
very
looking
well
handsome.
dressed.
I was going to say, Dave, you should take some lessons from Murat for when it comes to dressing for the press
talking
box.
about? Dave's looking sharp too.
I wouldn't knock this suit, Drew.
Okay. In any event,
$1,000 suit.
We'll take our first commercial break, and when we come back, more Jets and Blues talk, this time with Murat Atesh as our guest. It is, what day is it? It's Wednesday, isn't it? Okay, Wednesday, we're pregame show before the Jets and the Blues. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg. We're live at City Place, second floor, here for the Jets and the Blues, the Illegal Curve pregame show.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime. Visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
The clock has struck 7 p.m. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve pregame show. Drew Mandel, Ezra Ginsburg, Dave Manouk, and from The Athletic, our good friend Murat Atesh joining us on the program. The Illegal Curve pregame show. The Jets and the Blues, Game 5, getting underway in about an hour and 40 minutes, hour 45, somewhere closer to the 8:45, 8:50 mark. Tonight, we're here right now in City Place. Come join us. Lots going on. Food options galore, drink options galore. If you're downtown, if you're within earshot, welcome. This is the Illegal Curve pregame show. Murat, nice to see you. We were saying that is one fine suit, and I have to say it even looks better close up than it did from a distance away.
Yeah, the Illegal Curve cameras are flattering to me, and I appreciate that you went with my $100,000 rider on the lighting and all that.
No problem. We know what it takes to get a celeb of your caliber on the program. So we appreciate your time. Obviously, massive game. I mean, It's an understatement, especially given the way games 3 and 4 went from the Winnipeg Jets perspective. What are you looking for? What's sort of the one item you're going to be keeping an eye on maybe early in tonight's game to give you some confidence or give you some evidence that what happened in games 3 and 4 is now beyond the Winnipeg Jets and it is now a whole new series, albeit best of 3 instead of best of 7?
For me, I guess the broadest stroke, I kind of have a broad stroke answer and a specific answer. The broad stroke is survive the first 5 minutes. Even in the 2 games that Winnipeg won, I think St. Louis had the better start, and there was a degree of pulling the game out and sticking to it, and the resilience that the Jets have shown when they've been at their best. So if they can get through what I perceive to be a St. Louis storm early, and it's 0-0 or 1-1 or something winnable from there, I think the Jets are a wagon when they're up. I think that they're one of the best teams at playing with a lead. So I think that getting through that is the broadest stroke most important thing. And then just on the most specific thing I can think of is Winnipeg has success in its D zone when it traps teams in the corners. In games 3 and 4, St. Louis came up with a couple of new wrinkles to get the pucks to the point with time and space, with lanes crowded by their own players. And I think that Winnipeg has spent a couple of days looking at how are they going to take that time and space away. So if St. Louis has time and rain at the points, that's going to be a problem. If not, that means Winnipeg's figured some things out.
Let me ask you this. You're talking about the Jets weathering the storm. I mean, it's sort of counterintuitive a little bit because the Jets are the home team. You would think they'd be the ones who would come out come out of the gate like thoroughbreds, but that hasn't been the case so far this series. Why do you think that is? Is it nerves? Is it, just the anticipation? We saw what St. Louis has done to the Jets both on the road and at home early in the games. Why do you think the Jets haven't been able to match that energy at puck drop?
That's a great question, and I wish I had a better answer. But after 4 games of even when Winnipeg has done well, there have been really great Blues chances within the first couple of minutes. I'm just preparing myself for more of the same. I don't know if that's Jim Montgomery having a couple of extra plans early on, but there have been moments of either Jets giveaway or breakouts starting with everybody in position behind the St. Louis Blues net, and you think Winnipeg should have it sorted out, and yet they don't. There's a chance that gets created. Robert Thomas has had a couple of those off of clean breakouts that I'm just thinking St. Louis seems to arrive to these things better prepared.
Rod, recently in The Athletic, you had an article about 5 Jets players that need to step up, which obviously you probably could have included the entire team right after games 3 and 4. But one of the
taxi squad, what the hell's the taxi squad doing?
Yeah, exactly. Parker Ford's got to be better for the Jets in game 5, right? But Vladislav Nemestikov is one guy that I wanted to ask you about because we all know that the second line has not been good, not just in games 3 and 4. I think you would agree that through the totality of this series, the second line has left more to be desired, maybe with the exception of Cole Perfetti, who maybe you think his performance in game 4 was maybe a little bit more promising. We're not going to get into the goal. But, I mean, what does a good game look like for Vladislav Nemestikov? Because obviously this team needs him to produce more offense, along with the rest of the second line. Iafallo's in there as well now.
Yeah, I would say I like what they've done defensively. I think Vladislav Nemesnikov is a really hard-working player. He's a tenacious player. He makes a lot of high effort, but yet somehow quiet plays in his own zone that help get Winnipeg up the ice. But he is not an elite finisher. His touch around the net isn't the stuff of Winnipeg's star players. So what stands out in memory is the fact that he has only 3 shots on goal, 5 shot attempts, no points. And there's a lot of moments where you think, hey, this could be a break, and the play sort of offensively dies on his stick. For me, Alex Iafallo, that's a nice little bit of a chemistry upgrade to that line. Cole Perfetti might not be fair. You're 23 years old. This is your first full season, your first full playoffs, all that sort of stuff. But you almost have to drive that bus and make sure the puck ends up in the net.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you about Gabriel Velarde. He hasn't played a lot in quite some time. So, we saw him make the change, of course, from the yellow non-contact to the regular jersey. And it didn't seem like there was going to be any question from Scott Arniel as to whether he'd be right back on that top line. Are you surprised that they're not easing him back? As Scott Arniel told us, when he's cleared, so he's ready to go. So what kind of impact, I guess, is the question I have for you, Murat, do you expect from a guy who has been off for as long as he has been?
Yeah, I mean, it was an upper body injury, so he's been able to get his feet under him for a little while. His hands have been amazing in practice. Even when he wasn't taking hits, even when he wasn't shooting full bore, his hands are as fast as they've ever been. So maybe first and foremost, I expect a power play impact, get the Jets to the power play. I think of him as the quarterback of that power play, to be honest. Scheifele maybe snaps it to him, and then he's got all the options that he picks from. And I think he can do that whatever physical state that he's in. I also think that his upper body injury may have been the sort where, recurrence is an issue. And I think that they waited to an extent where they're ready to say this guy can take hits and be his full self. And that's why he's going straight to the top line, and they're not trying to baby him in.
You talked about this in your article. You said that, it was Gabriel Velarde himself who said he's not going to be Superman. He's not going to all of a sudden be, leaping over tall buildings, but you referred to him as Robin Hood in your most recent article for The Athletic. Maybe expand on that point a little bit for those in our audience who don't understand the analogy or is that a metaphor? I'm not really sure where you're going with that idea of Gabe Velarde.
It's a
more
juxtaposition, actually.
Gabe Velarde more as Robin Hood than Superman.
I was oddly too proud of that line, and that you picked up on it makes me happy. So thank you very much. I think that we can start with the Superman thing. He said it himself. Right. He doesn't need to be Superman. And that's a fact. He doesn't need to go in there and do things that are beyond him. He just needs to play his own game. Mm-hmm. For me, one of the best things about having Velarde back is the trickle down, is that it moves Alex Iafallo to a place where I think he can have more success on the second line. And maybe even more importantly, it reunites Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton on that third line. That's been one of the best shutdown lines in the league this year. And for me, what's happening there is that it's redistributing Winnipeg's biggest wealth, biggest luxury is all these middle six forwards that play a hard game, that can get the puck to the dirty areas. Winnipeg's depth tends to be better than most other teams. This snaps the lines back into place where they can actually exploit that. And that's why I say he's Robin Hood, redistributing all of that middle six wealth.
Sorry, just so I didn't realize this is the Illegal Curve Socialist show at the same time here, yeah. But that's okay. Murat Atesh of The Athletic is our guest. We are live here at City Place prior to Game 5 between the Jets and the Blues. This is the Illegal Curve pregame show.
Yeah, obviously we haven't spoken about Connor Hellebuck yet, and everybody knows his numbers: 11 goals in 2 games in St. Louis. I mean, I almost
deep sigh from Ezra Ginsburg.
Well,
there.
no, I mean,
I got emotional.
I mean, I'm not as worried, I think, as some other people are. And obviously, you follow what's going on in social media. You talk to people. There were some people that were calling for Eric Comrie to start Game 5, which I think you would agree is maybe absurd, or at the very least partly absurd, based on the season he's had and based on the seasons he's put together over the last 3 or 4 years. But if Connor Hellebuck does blank, how are we going to know that he's going to have a good game early on in this game? If he makes a couple of 10-bell saves, like, what are you looking for early on? Because obviously games 3 and 4 went completely south for him.
Yeah, it's tough when the best goalie in the world has given up an average of slightly over 4 goals per game over his last 3 playoffs. That is tough. And for me, it's so interesting because along the way, he does make 10-bell saves. If he robs somebody tonight, I'm not going to say this is fixed, this is over.
Sure.
Like, for me, a lot of the issues happen through traffic. Winnipeg's net front defense is letting bodies through the crease and into the slot at some tough times. There's a bit of puck luck involved as well, but St. Louis has clearly done their homework, and they know what worked for Colorado, what worked for Vegas, all of this sort of stuff. I think that even if, as I do, I believe that Connor Hellebuck is the best that there is, at some point you get rattled by all the goals going in behind you. And I've seen some video studies. I also worked with Jesse Granger at on a piece at The Athletic, and you can almost track him for some of those point shots. He's setting himself a little bit deeper into his net than he has done in the regular season. And multiple sources are saying this, goaltending sources who know better than I do. So for me, if the Blues have the puck, they've worked it to the point, they've got traffic in net, and Connor Hellebuck is dealing with that, and maybe he's, that 1 foot out, he's playing aggressive and he's finding those pucks, that's going to be what's going to give me confidence.
Sorry for a second, Dave. Just want to leapfrog on that. Him playing deeper net is something I agree. A lot of people have noticed that. It's sort of been evident on a lot of those shots where he almost looks small in that as opposed to big and boring like when he's at his peak. Do you think that's a confidence issue for a guy who's supremely confident usually? It just seems so odd that his approach or how he's maintaining himself in the goal crease is different all of a sudden than it has been all season long.
It seems like a test for his resilience. And I'm going to lean on, I think it was Stephen Valiquette who said this the other day, where when you're getting really beat in traffic and you're struggling to find pucks as a goaltender, there's two different ways that goalies try to solve that problem. One is by getting too aggressive and finding themselves at the edge of the crease. There's a ton of space behind them, and the slightest side-to-side movement opens up a huge hole. And the other is by shrinking deep in your net, thinking that extra space is going to give you a better sight line on it. And to me, I think I see that second one more than I see the first. And yeah, if his confidence is hit, I do see that as a bit of a resilience thing. It is so hard to do the right thing over and over and over again when it's not working. And he's a human being. That's got to be tough.
One of the things I'm curious about from your perspective, though, is the home ice advantage. We've been talking about it with the players for today, and we know that obviously every team has held the home ice to their advantage in this series to date. So from your perspective, how important tonight are going to be the matchups and Scott O'Neill having that option of last change?
I think that they're going to be important almost more about the defense than the forwards. We usually assume like, okay, well, because Lowry is the shutdown line, he's going to be used in some extra way. But if you look at the way Jim Montgomery uses his bench, he hasn't been shy about that. Yes, in St. Louis, Montgomery tried to get Braden Shen out against Scheifele a little more often, and there's a little more physicality there. But if you look at the minutes at the end of the day, there's still an awful lot of Robert Thomas versus Mark Scheifele, and that's a matchup both coaches have been fine with. Same thing with the Lowry line. I don't think that the Blues are hiding from him as much as you might expect when you look at the minutes at the end of the day. But there are key moments within a hockey game. There are icings. There are offensive zone draws. There's a handoff shifts when a team's got some pressure for a little while. And I think that when Winnipeg can keep, I'm going to say it's third pair, Stanley and Shen, away from some of those top guns that are faster than they are, I think that's an advantage for the Winnipeg Jets to help keep themselves out of their own zone.
Game 5 between the St. Louis Blues and the Winnipeg Jets in about 90 minutes time. This is the Illegal Curve pregame show. We're live on location, second floor, City Place, food court. Tons of options available for everyone as they make their way into downtown Winnipeg, getting set for either the whiteout party or the whiteout itself within the confines of the arena. You know, Murat, you talk about, the Jets, you mentioned the physicality. To me, that's been an area where the Blues have been able to maybe intimidate the Winnipeg Jets a little bit. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's the word I'm going to go with right now. Are you surprised that the Jets haven't, in my perspective, been able to match the physicality that the St. Louis Blues have been dictating upon them through the first 4 games of this series?
That's an interesting one. I don't know about matching or not matching. I thought to myself after games 1 and 2 that the Blues had lost their composure, that you had seen some really bad penalties from them at different times. There's a Zach Bolduc cross-check on Alex Iafallo, and there was certain moments where I thought the Blues kind of came off of it. Games 3 and 4, I got to say for me, it's the Jets that lost their composure. And whether it's a situation where they've just been hit so many times or they were frustrated on the score sheet, whatever else it is. But when you have, Adam Lowry going into a scrum and protecting Morgan Barron, who's a big, strong guy, he's fine, from Tyler Tucker pulling him down and taking a penalty on that play. I think that's a situation of not handling the physicality well. And it's not about the hitting. It's about an intense after the whistle sort of confrontation. I think he would have been fine to just let it go. So within the flow of play, I've seen Scheifele get smoked. I've seen Josh Morrissey get smoked. Even Luke Shen got smoked a couple of times, right? And I do think that that's a test resilience-wise and staying on the front foot of a game when you're taking that physical beating. At the same time, I think it's been the penalties that have cost the Jets the most, and that's a composure thing.
I swear I was going to ask you about Josh Morrissey before that Jets fan showed up with the Morrissey jersey and the 44 hat, but he's obviously somebody you also included in your article for The Athletic about players that need to step up. And obviously, Josh Morrissey is a guy, I don't speak for everyone, but he's a guy that I'm expecting to step up in a big way here in Game 5 tonight.
Yeah, I talked to him about that today a little bit. During the scrums, he and I sort of had a separate chat. And when he was growing up, him and his dad used to talk about Kobe Bryant's impact at the end of games, saying when the game was on the line, you might be able to have an impact that takes things over, turns the tide a little bit. I think we've seen Josh Morrissey have shifts like that. I think that there have been times where he started to put his paw prints all over the game. I don't think that there's been a game that's been his signature from start to finish. He's been outscored by, I think, 3 of the Blues defensemen, and I think outplayed by Fowler.
And that was just one
Parayko.
game for Cam Fowler, right?
Yeah, I mean, come on. So we're all waiting for a Josh Morrissey signature moment, and I think that the good thing about that is there's a lot of belief he can deliver it.
I'm curious to your thoughts on Dylan Sandberg, because one of the biggest things we talked about this year when the team allowed Brendan Dillon to move on was that he was going to have to assume that role to take that second pairing spot on the left side and see what he could do. Well, he smashed it out of the park. I mean, he was phenomenal throughout the course of the season and into the playoffs. How are you seeing him transition his strong play during the regular season during these first 4 games of the playoffs?
I think overall he's been really good, and he's been a real stabilizing force in the top 4, something that you'd be pleased with if you're looking at the year-over-year development. I've found some moments where maybe he seemed a bit nervous to me. Game 1, for sure, early on, I thought Sandberg was one of the players that was a bit slower to get his feet about him. In Game 4, on the play where Connor Hellebuyck lays his paddle down and he tries to stop Braden Shen from cutting across the ice after the Lowry penalty, Sandberg blows a tire, and you don't like to see that. That helps create Shen's time and space to finish that play off. Overall, though, I think that he's been particularly strong. I think that he and Pionk are the best version of that as well. When DeMello was sick and Luke Shen stepped up, I don't think that worked particularly well. So he is not flawless through 4 games, but I think that he's been everything you want from a top 4 defenseman overall.
Well, to your point there, there's been almost no Winnipeg Jets players who have been flawless through the first 4 games. Does that maybe give the Jets a little bit of confidence in saying, look, we haven't really played all that well. There's been spurts. We played the third periods at home pretty well. But for the most part, St. Louis has done a pretty good job controlling the flow of a lot of these games. Do the Winnipeg Jets maybe use that as solace in saying, hey, we haven't played our best, yet it's a 2-all series, best of 3, we're on home ice. I know that, you're sort of alluding to that in some of the comments the last couple of days, but do you think that, in that dressing room, they're saying, look, we have another level to go still, and we're in an okay position given where we are at tied to 2 games apiece?
Yeah, I understand that concept completely, and they have been pointing to that. They say, well, we know we can be better, we've been better, and when we play the right way, we're actually controlling chunks of these games so that there is another place where they can get to. At the same time, for me, when I listen to these, elite athletes talk, they have to use whatever is at hand. If it's a home game, great. We're one of the best home teams in the NHL. If this had been a road game, great. We're one of the best road game teams in the NHL. You use what you have. And I think that that's one thing the Jets are pointing at, because they know and they can see that level that they could get to. And so they are trying to frame it as it gives them solace and confidence that say, hey, as long as we do what we know that we can do, we should be able to win 2 out of these 3 games.
This might seem like an obvious question for you, but how important do you think the special teams battle is going to be in these last 2 to 3 games? Because obviously the Jets power play, we all know the numbers, 2 for 12 through 4 games. To me, the Jets were a completely different team when their power play was at 32 to 35%, right? So for you, how important is them, if not getting a power play goal, making sure that the power play at the very least is looking better and getting some looks? Obviously, Cole Perfetti did have a goal, let's be honest, last game on the power play, but how important is that PP for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's cruising at 16.7%, which is half of what it flirted with most of the regular season. That's obviously not good enough. If you include Cole Perfetti's goal, which probably did cross the line, it would be 25%. And even that's not the standard that they've set so far. So for me, that's why we're talking about Gabriel Velarde's return as an awfully big deal, and the amount of chances, really dangerous chances, that he can create when he's out there. I think they can get by without Velarde or without Ehlers on that top power play. Without both of them was kind of tough. And then it's just in terms of its overall importance, there have been moments in this series where the referees can't help themselves. Where the penalties are build up for one team and you're thinking, well, geez, that was a soft call. And then there's a makeup call that goes the other way.
Please see the Adam Lowry roughing penalty, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that would not necessarily get called in a whole bunch of situations, but because of other calls that they've made, they feel like they've got to and even things out.
I have a different opinion on that. I don't agree with a lot of...
That's a shocker.
Yeah. I don't agree with a lot of the calls that the officials have made for both teams. But I think that the standard has been relatively consistent. Is it too whistle happy from my perspective? Yes. But they've been, anytime there's been any post-whistle shenanigans, they've been fairly consistent of grabbing one player and saying, you're going to be penalized as a result. So the standard is too low from my perspective, but at least it's consistent from game to game to game to game. And I think it's incumbent on the players to adjust and not engage in those post-whistle shenanigans.
Make better choices, avoid shenanigans.
I mean, I'm a big fan of shenanigans in my personal life, but just not in the on-ice aspect of the game.
There we go. Well, Murat, I'm curious about the idea of fragility. I mean, do you think there is that to be taken into account for today's game? If they give up an early goal, I mean, again, this team has been so good about leaving what happened in the past, good or bad, whether it's a win or a loss. They've had the mantra this year. We don't talk about it. They enjoy it for that night. The next day, they're already moving on to and their focus has always been laser focus, right? When we tried to jump ahead of I think it was the last game of the year was against Anaheim. We were already trying to talk about game one. Scott Arniel, nope, we're talking about this. And even smaller than that, they talk about period. So do you think that there's any cause for concern? Like, okay, they don't have that, you said have that good start for the first 5 minutes and then you can kind of weather the storm. But what happens if they don't? What do you see from this team? And again, I'm not asking you to predict exactly what's going to happen, but how do you see this team's ability to kind of bounce back from something that doesn't go their way?
Well, coming out of game one, you would have thought, geez, this is the playoff proof that the resilience they've worked on all season long is there when the moments are the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
They pulled that game out. They made the comeback that they needed. And the last teams that have beaten St. Louis when the Blues were heading into the third period tied or leading, all three of them are Winnipeg, right? Like that's an impressive accomplishment. And the Jets were riding that high, and that was wonderful for them. If you're only looking at games 3 and 4, you can see some bad habits emerge when the Jets start chasing games. And some of them, okay, well, you can blame a bounce, you can blame the goalie, you can blame whatever else it is. Towards the end of these games, you're seeing some of the bad habits creep out where maybe it's Kyle Connor not back checking all the way because they're hoping to get a puck the other way, and I don't really want to pick on him because he's driven the bus offensively. I don't think that he's one of those guys that I'm leaning on too much. But at the same time, when you see star players come off their habits, and when you see the Jets end up letting a small lead become a big one in games 3 and 4, you start to wonder, well, hey, despite the way that they've really correctly identified this problem to compartmentalize and do one thing at a time, it's still a work in progress.
A few more for you. Murat Atesh is our guest. He, of course, writes about the Winnipeg Jets for The Athletic. We encourage everybody to get a subscription if you don't already have one to get more insight into what Murat brings to the table on a regular basis. Let me ask you from the St. Louis perspective. Ryan Suter's back in the lineup. Tyler Tucker out of the lineup due to injury. He's played games 2, 3, and 4, and he's been a physical force. He had the game-winning goal in game 4. From the Jets' perspective, with no Tucker and now Suter back in there, do you think that is advantageous for the Winnipeg Jets potentially?
I mean, theoretically, only in that St. Louis had the choice and they chose Tucker. But I think that towards the end of the roster, like that position is, the answer from the Jets' perspective, and honestly from mine too, is Winnipeg needs to worry about itself more than the depth defenseman on the St. Louis Blues. Credit to Suter for his lifelong experience, and maybe that is an edge in some form or shape, but I think Winnipeg has to be its own edge.
It's not a fleet of foot third pairing defense for both teams, to be frankly. Stanley and Schenn, not fleet of foot, and Leddy and Ryan Suter. I mean, Suter's definitely lost the step over his career at whatever 1,500 games or whatever he's played now.
Yeah, it's one of those matchups matter about the defense moments, I think.
Just sticking with matchups, I know we talked about a little bit about it earlier, but what's the kind of a matchup that you're going to be keen on for tonight's game? I know that it's hard to kind of nail it down to one, but for me, it was kind of seeing who Scott Arniel wants to match up the Scheifele line against, because we saw a lot of top line versus top line in the first 2 home games.
Yeah, I think you'll see more top line versus top line. I think that it's a situation where you've got to believe in Scheifele and Connor and Velarde now to win that matchup. Let your best players be your best players. If they outplay the top line, that's going to help put you on the front foot. Similarly, Lowry is going to get a lot of that assignment as well. So in a way, for me, I'm actually looking at that second line saying, well, if there's 2 lines on the Blues you got to worry about the most, maybe you can keep Nemesnikov and Iafallo and Perfetti away from those guys, exploit some of the bottom 6, and maybe this is the night that they break through offensively, because Winnipeg so obviously needs secondary scoring.
I'm going to ask you about that fourth line, because they've been, regardless of who's been in it and whether it's a regular season game or a playoff game, it just seems like they just bring that energy. And to me, a guy like Jared Anderson-Dolan, who we, forget about because, of course, well, we don't forget about him because he was on the Moose, so we're still reporting on him. But a lot of folks forgot about him, even though he was seen as that 13th forward during training camp, then broke his foot when he blocked that shot. But from your perspective, I mean, what kind of boost can those guys do in the way they play such an honest game in that sort of north-south manner?
Yeah, I think one of the things you like the most about players like that is they give up nothing for free. There's not going to be a back check that they cheat. There's not going to be a middle of the ice battle that they cheat. They're going to have their motors going all of the way through. If they put together any offense, it's a bonus, and they've already put together some offense. Anderson Dolan went wide, and I think it was Jake Neighbors who sort of, I want to say, lost his mind in the name of searching for a big hit. Suddenly you've got a centering pass. Gustafson's got the goal. And what a finish from David Gustafson. Yeah. I know that he's not necessarily expected to play in tonight's game, but anyone you put in that fourth line can help. And that's one of the situations where Winnipeg's worked for years to get to, where a player like Morgan Barron, who could realistically be in the middle six on a lot of teams, and even this one, depending on the night, is your fourth line center on a night like this one. Jared Anderson-Dolan has contributed to offense as well. I'm not expecting them to go out and turn the series in Winnipeg's favor, but they can turn a shift in Winnipeg's favor and let the other guys go to work afterwards.
Last one for you. With the return of Velarde, the trickle-down effect means Niederreiter is now back with Appleton and Lowry. They played 543 minutes together during the regular season. That line, Adam Lowry's impact, I think, hasn't been felt significantly on this series so far. With that trio reunited, what are you looking for from that Winnipeg Jets, call it 2B or 2A line in tonight's Game 5 and for the remainder of the series?
Yeah, when Winnipeg was cruising to the President's Trophy and putting together crazy win streaks in the first half of the season, that line was producing all kinds of offense to go with the fact that they control zone time. They control flow of play. No matter who you put them against, the game gets played in Winnipeg's offensive end, and they wear teams down along the walls in front of the net. I'm not saying that they need to score tonight to get Winnipeg the win, but that would be an awfully big tide turner. The other thing that they can do, even if they don't, is bury the Blues in their own zone, protect pucks along the walls, get the puck to the net, keep them there for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds, and then you can hand off that shift, keep it in the offensive zone. You can get Scheifele out after a shift like that, and ideally that turns into offense. There's some analytics that suggest that handoff shifts are some of the most dangerous in the game, and that's one of the things that Lowry's line can do for you.
Earlier or later than 4:30 a.m. for you to be done with all your game work today? What are you expecting?
That's a great over-under to set. Flight's at 8:30, I think, to St. Louis, so I hope to go earlier than 4:30 for the right.
Well, you can read it all on theathletic.com. Murat Atesh, our good friend, great coverage as always of the Winnipeg Jets, and a great appearance here this evening on the Illegal Curve pregame show. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you in the rink. Enjoy Game 5 tonight between the Jets and the Blues.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure as always. Murat Atesh of The Athletic, our guest. We head to break, and when we come back, more about the Jets and the Blues Game 5, a little more than an hour away. We're live here at City Place, second floor, the food court. Jets fans galore. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It is the Illegal Curve pregame show. Welcome back to City Place and the Illegal Curve pregame show. Of course, all those joining us live online on our YouTube channel. We remind everybody after tonight's game, win or lose, like we have done all season long, the Illegal Curve postgame show. Let's assume, let me just do some math in my head here. If the game is going to start probably closer to 8:50 p.m., we're probably looking at about an 11:30 post-game show start time. That's, of course, assuming there's no overtime. If there's overtime, well, then then it's going to be a very late night. So in any event, be sure to join us back on our YouTube channel for the Illegal Curve post-game show after tonight's contest between the Jets and the Blues. And if you're within earshot and you're saying, Drew, how do I find the Illegal Curve YouTube channel? Well, Illegal Curve YouTube is a good Google, but also this QR code that's right over here. Just scan that QR code. You will get the directions to Ezzy's house, and you will be able to find the Illegal Curve YouTube channel by scanning that QR code. So we look forward to that. See, it works. I know. There you go. Look at us go.
It's an active QR code.
I know. It's look at us using technology to our advantage. So we'll do that after the game tonight, and then of course we'll do it after the game 6 on Friday. Time to be determined. We don't know when that's going to be. And of course, if there is a Game 7, we'll be back here for a pregame show. Again, time to be determined.
Can we just stick on that topic for a second? Like, it is
The time to be
absolutely
determined?
driving me crazy. Like, can't they just give us the time already? Like, why do we have to wait like 24 hours before the game to get the game? Like, I have to plan my life here. Timmy has to plan his life. You guys, all of us, have to plan our schedules
because
and we don't know when the game is on Friday.
Because TV is all that matters. So basically what it's boiling down to is there's 3 games that are scheduled for Friday. The Jets and the Blues, which we know will be happening, no question about it. The other 2 games are the Panthers and the Lightning, as well as the Canadiens and the Capitals. Both of those series can end as early as tonight.
Washington's up 2-0.
Washington's up 2-0 on Montreal. So it looks like that series might end tonight. And Florida and Tampa are 2-2 at the start of the second period. So if there's a game 6 between the Panthers and the Lightning, you would assume that the Jets will be after that, probably around the 8:30 start time.
Yeah.
If there isn't a game 6, if there's only one game 6, the Jets and the Blues,
prime time,
probably closer to a 6:30, 7 o'clock start time on Friday. So that is where things stand. That is why we don't know when the game will be on Friday, but I'm assuming we're going to find out an answer to that tonight during the Illegal Curve post-game show, if not before then. Maybe as soon as we know what happens between the Capitals and the Canadiens and the Lightning and the Panthers. That should give pretty good insight into what time Game 6 will be on Friday.
Like, part of me wants the Habs to come back because I've been pulling for the Habs all season long just to make the playoffs and extend this series. But then there's also part of me that wants them to lose so that the Jets game can start earlier on Friday. So we'll see what happens.
You know, you don't think, beauty sleep doesn't come just
I think,
on 4 hours of sleep or
I think what Ezzy's saying is he doesn't want to have to be doing the show while we're getting ready to start the Saturday morning show.
Yeah, we've done that before. Those were late nights, early mornings, but that's okay. That's a good reminder, though.
Was that the Kyle Connor triple overtime? Was that a Friday night game?
No, that wasn't a Friday night game.
Was that
I think
a Thursday or Wednesday?
that was a midweek game of some sort. That game, what time did that post-game show?
Are you guys talking about the bubble year?
Yeah.
Well, you weren't on that post-game
You weren't on the show.
It was
Just me and
absolutely
Drew.
a weekend. It was a weekend.
No, I don't. Maybe it was a Sunday.
we go.
There you go. It's fan chat.
Yeah, it was. I don't think it was a Friday. Or
It wasn't
Saturday.
a Friday. I knew that.
I thought that woman was going to chime in with when the game was.
It's always good times here at City Place as we're getting set for the Jets and the Blues later on tonight, Game 5. No,
he's
a
just
game
kidding.
between the Oilers and the Jets from when Kyle Connor scored in triple overtime a bunch of years ago. If you
we
knew that
we
one,
can test your trivia knowledge, though.
Actually, you can win it. Hold on. Do you want to win a toque?
She doesn't wear toques. Okay, we'll give away a toque to somebody at some point during the show here.
It's plus 16 out, and we're giving away toques here. We need to be giving away like tank tops or something.
Nobody wants to see you in a tank top.
No, not me.
That's
Okay,
definite.
good.
To other people.
That's fine.
There you
Other
go.
people maybe, but definitely not you. There you go. Give it away.
Well, that's
There
a
you go.
beauty.
Now, if you don't wear it and you want to give it to a young fan who maybe would wear it, then you can do that as well.
Pay it forward. That's what the Jets need to do. They need to start paying it forward to some of their teammates on tonight's Game 5 between the Jets and the Blues. Again, we talked to Murad about the tone setting and the Jets needing to get that good start. And I thought it was really interesting that, again, he thought about weathering the opening storm from the Blues, because I want to see the Jets have the opening push.
Yeah.
I want to see that from a Winnipeg team that we haven't seen really through 4 games of the series. I thought that was a really interesting angle for Murad to take, that he's expecting the Blues to, again, sort of have the stronger
It was a Tuesday,
start.
by the way.
It was a Tuesday? Okay, I knew it wasn't a Saturday or a Sunday.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
I mean,
Yeah,
it was
I know.
the summer though, so like every day feels like a
No,
weekend.
It was May 25th.
It wasn't
Well,
it wasn't the summer. It wasn't the bubble series. It was the
Sorry,
no fan.
late spring.
Okay, different entirely. But anyways, back to my original point about the start to tonight's game for the Jets,
Sure.
Dave.
Starting on time.
Starting on time, because
Like they did in Game 4.
yeah, Game 4 with
You skipped me there, didn't you? Because I got that
got
trivia
dis-
question wrong.
You
That's
got
why.
you got distracted too easily, so I wanted to go to Dave.
That dog has a puppy tail.
There you go. I want to see the Jets take it to St. Louis through the first few minutes. You need to do what you can as quickly as you can to wipe the memories of the 2 games in St. Louis. And the Jets, to me, are a team that's probably got doubts in their head. It's hard not to, given the way those 2 games went. So what's the quickest way to erase those doubts? Have a strong performance, have a strong start to tonight's game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the key is playing within your structure, though. I mean, you don't want to be running around trying to like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to get
No
hits.
question.
You have to have some. I'm going to quote a Druism, as he controlled aggression, and so I think if you can do that, if you can actually play, like I said, within that structure, don't get outside of yourself. Look, if you can possess the puck, that's better than going for hits, right? So possess the puck, play in the offensive zone. Don't be defending, because look, one of the things, even in that Game 4 where they started so well, they gave up an early chance within the first 30 seconds of the game. They gave up the chance. So to the point that you're currently making, I would agree with. You have to take it to them. You have to kind of set the tone, get that crowd in it. Like I said, if it ends up being a big hit, then so be it. If it ends up being an early chance on Jordan Binnington, and one of the other things I saw that I thought was interesting, we're talking about goaltending and not giving advantages. Don't have ineffective shots on Jordan Binnington, because essentially it's warming him up, giving him the puck on chances that have no chance of beating him. Like a soft muffin from the blue line.
Now I'm hungry for a muffin.
Well, there's lots of places around here at City Place that you can get a muffin, Drew. But we're going to start calling Drew the Muffin Man. But the fact of the matter is,
I've been called worse things than Muffin Man.
It's true. But the fact of the matter is
Laura used to call me Pumpernickel.
Well, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother show. But
why did she call you Pumpernickel?
I knew that was going to get
that was her nickname for me for the longest time.
But like, where did that come from?
I don't know. You'd have to ask her that.
You do like pumpernickel bread?
I don't.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay.
Sourdough.
I feel like I've seen you.
She could have called me sourdough. That would have been a lot more apropos.
A lot more apropos. I agree.
You're a focaccia guy.
Ezzy, you're just white bread, Ezzy.
No, I'm city rye, thick cut city rye all the way, baby.
Okay.
The illegal curve sandwiches on city rye, thick cut breads. That's what I like.
Hello, gentlemen.
I should have known better. But anyways, look, that to me is the key for this Jets team. This is, like I said, just going out, playing that way.
Easy over there, Pumpernickel.
Setting that tone, getting all of these fans in here excited. And, it's going to be, the building's going to be rocking regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But again, obviously, if you can get some early enthusiasm.
Well, if that nervous energy can turn to excitable energy, because I do feel a sense of nervousness. I think people are justifiably.
People. I think meant the players.
Not the players. I'm not about the people. I'm talking about the vibe checks. Are all the rage nowadays.
Murat's a big vibe guy.
Murat's a big vibe guy, and if you're a Winnipeg Jets fan right now, your vibes, I think justifiably are filled with nerves. You've seen what happened to this team.
Do I look nervous?
Well, I mean, you're not.
I'm not a fan.
You're not a
fan. Do you look fan?
Do
I look? I was trying to channel my inner Jordan Binnington.
Yeah, we appreciate that, but in any event, there you go. Somebody's putting the
fire
behind Dave's head. That's appropriate.
Love it.
There you go. Can't do the show without there being a fire behind Dave's head. That's very funny.
Very much.
Yeah. But Leslie, how about that?
See, now I'm upset I gave away the toque, because I should have given the toque to that sort of effort.
Yes, somebody who brought a fire behind your head.
Back.
Go chase down that lady. What about it, Ezzy, though? The vibes and the buzz and the sort of the energy and the excitement or lack thereof, maybe.
Well, the vibes here in the City Place food court are great. I can tell you that much.
Yes.
But obviously, you want to harness the energy that you're going to get from the whiteout crowd, guys. That's what we're talking about. And that's why a hot start, a good start is arguably the most important here in Game 5 at home, right? Because you want to make sure that you're taking everything in. You want to make sure that you're, just starting right. And the thing is, you want to make sure that you get the first goal. We know that if the Jets score the first goal, there's a good likelihood they're going to win the game. It's
not
just,
Game 4.
Well, it didn't happen in Game 4.
You're right. I mean, but again, that is all part of.
Generally speaking, if you look at the Jets throughout the year, not to say that if they give up a goal, they can't come back.
Yeah.
They've shown, I think they had 20 third period comebacks this year, if I'm not mistaken, something like that, right, guys? But I think when you talk about this game, I still want to see the Jets play a consistent brand of hockey from start to finish. Sure. And I don't think we've seen that yet in the first 4 games. So yes, Dave, the start is important. Yeah. You want to make sure that you're doing everything right. And you make a good point earlier, Dave, when you say you want to make sure that you're not just going out there and hitting everything. You want to make sure it's with a purpose.
Yeah.
Right. You want to make sure that it's part of establishing a forecheck and establishing that puck pressure that we've talked about. That's what we want to see. And I think it is going to happen. And obviously we don't know what's going to happen in tonight's game, but I obviously think that the Jets are going to benefit from having the whiteout crowd behind them. How can you not? It's the loudest fans in the entire league, right, guys? So you got to harness that energy and obviously not turn into Kevin Nealon from Happy Gilmore, as Dave is thinking about. I know Dave too well to know that he was thinking of that Kevin Nealon speech in Happy Gilmore. But I mean, it's important, and the Jets have to make sure that they're getting contributions from all lines, not necessarily goals, but they have to make sure that they're getting consecutive shifts. We talked about it, that waves of pressure that we've seen all season long. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to keep an eye on, because I think with the exception of the first period in Game 4, the starts haven't been good. So, the Jets just have to make sure they come out with another good start like they did in Game 4.
To me,
and then they'll win the game in the series.
That's a bold statement. That's a confident approach there from Mr. Ginsburg for sure. To me, I think that you're looking for just the ice to be flipped a little bit more than you've seen so far in this series. And I think you want to see Scott Arniel take advantage of that last change. Because we've heard about the tweak or that Jim Montgomery made for the St. Louis Blues, and I think that he is probably, if you had to evaluate the jobs that the respective coaches have done so far, is I would put the notch in Montgomery's column over Scott Arniel's column so far through the first 4 games. But that's why it's now time for Scott Arniel to sort of step up and prove that whatever adjustments have been made by the Winnipeg Jets over the last 2 days, where they haven't been on the ice, haven't been, there hasn't been a game since Sunday, that you want to see what he's done, what he's incorporated into the Jets' approach that's going to help stem the tide of the St. Louis Blues and their effectiveness through the last couple games.
Look, I mean, the bottom line is you're not going to get lauded for excellent coaching and then, again, ignoring the idea that you still have a series to play. I mean, you have to coach in the postseason, and making those adjustments, Drew, is key. And that's why you're absolutely right. Like Jim Montgomery, like I said, he is an excellent coach.
Yeah, he is.
And so he has made adjustments, and we're going to see what Scott Arniel has spent the last 2 days doing, because again, he wasn't wanting to make us privy to his inner thoughts and the inner plannings of the coaching staff. We of course watched him this morning at Canada Life, and yesterday it was not so much. It was just a come and chit chat. Some of the Gabe Velarde was on the ice with the extras who were officially recalled. We should make mention of that. All but Parker Ford, who's still working his way back in now that he has his cast off. But the fact of the matter is that this is incumbent on him to get those matchups that he wants, to be able to get those D pairings out against certain Blues forward groups, and again to use your forward groups against certain D pairings. And so. And again, whether he needs to make adjustments in game, like that's obviously also the key. It's not just about tapping on the line and saying, okay, well, it's your turn to go out, your turn to go out. It's kind of like when you watch the equipment staff, they got their hands on the hockey sticks in the, during the play, and they're waiting. It's kind of like, almost looks like a guy playing piano, right? Because it's going to have that control. Okay, this guy's got the puck, this guy's got the puck. Same for a coach. You have to kind of get a feel for the strings of the players, and you're pulling on those strings. Again, you don't want to overcoach them, but you have to be able to recognize things that are happening. And of course, Scott Arniel has a long history of experience, both as a player and a coach. Right. So I expect him to be able to do it. And we're going to see whether that's going to be put to the test in today's game.
Well, the Jets have to do 2 things. They have to make life more difficult for Jordan Binnington, more traffic, to your point about,
for sure,
fewer just gimme shots. And at the same time, they have to, eliminate his puck handling from being a factor in this game. Because anytime you have a goalie back there, and we know that Binnington's a better puck handler than Connor Hellebuyck is. We've seen that at play.
And that's one, by the way, Drew, that's one of the things that has been talked about is stop giving him those easy pucks to, Niederreiter talked about that today.
You can't establish your forecheck.
Right, because you're just getting it, and he, to your point, he is such a good stick handler that he ends up being able to just break up whatever your opportunity you're trying to create for yourself.
Right. It's one pass and it's out. I mean, the Jets, if you put the puck on his stick on the dump in, it's out before you can even have a chance to establish the forecheck that has been so important for the Winnipeg Jets this season.
Right. And we always talk about this with establishing the forecheck. The reason why that's so important is because it establishes zone time and leads to offense.
Right.
It's not just because you want to have a pretty looking forecheck, right? Like this is the whole point. You keep it away from Jordan Binnington, you get the puck, you're able to have those low to high plays. And that's something that I want to see more from the Jets, is those low to high plays. Because again, there's not enough ice out there to see odd man rush after odd man rush. I would be surprised if in tonight's game there's more than 1 or 2 odd man rushes, right?
St. Louis is too good defensively and too diligent with their matchups to turn this into a rush chance game. This isn't Vegas.
No.
Vegas is a rush chance team. The Jets, against weaker opponents can be, but St. Louis has been so on their marks that the Jets' success, when they've had it, has come largely on the forecheck and turnovers in the blue zone.
Well, and to your point, Drew, I think I read that Philip Broberg and Justin Falk haven't been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal against. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's the second D pair for the Blues, and we're 4 games into the series, and they haven't been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal against, right? So obviously you want to have a little bit more success against that line. You want to put some more physicality on that line. They're a line that can obviously move the puck. Broberg's been obviously a nice fit coming over for Edmonton, right, guys? But it goes back to what we talked about with the possession game, right? And making sure that you're getting enough zone time to create offense, use your speed, hopefully have shift after shift of successful zone time. And hopefully that'll lead to, goals early on in the game and throughout for the Jets. But it's, it's a very, they've got to play better. I mean, it's simple as that. It goes back to the last two games haven't been good enough. And so you have to be better from puck drop to the end of the game. This team needs to. This is a must-win game. This is more of a must-win than any other game that we've talked about all year long. Period.
I would agree with that, because if you lose tonight's game, I don't think you're coming back for Game 7. I mean, I just don't see
the way St. Louis plays at home. You're probably not.
Right. I just don't see the Jets going into St. Louis after losing 3 consecutive games and then being able to beat St. Louis in St. Louis. You
really see the Jets losing 4 in a row?
If they lose tonight, yeah. If they lose tonight, I mean, I think they'll just be shell-shocked to some extent. I mean, I think that they will. I mean, I guess to some extent, maybe it's the manner in which they lose.
Right, of course. But we talked about that earlier in the show. If it's a demolition,
right,
then I can understand your point. If
I
it's a 2-1 game in overtime,
it's still going to be hard. I mean, that's why this game is so important. You need to see the performance. The last 2 nights have been so concerning to me. The last 2 games has been so concerning to me that it's hard to dig yourself out of that psychological hole if it becomes a 3rd straight game. That to me is where the concern is. How quickly do those thoughts of the last couple of years become not just sort of that whisper in the back of your head, but instead the loud blaring announcement. Hello to the Wald brothers as they walk past us here at City Place in the second floor food court area.
Are you just announcing everybody who walks by?
My old friends can get a personal shout out.
Last time he ignored you.
No, that was 2 times ago. And I texted him and said he can't be doing that. Yeah, even if I'm talking mid-sentence, he has to acknowledge me.
He did, and if I recall correctly, as he gave you the old snub.
Jonathan just turned around and chuckled. So I think you guys are good. I think your 40 years of friendship are good.
It's going to survive another couple days here. But to me, that's why tonight's game is so important from the Winnipeg Jets perspective. And again, I think it has to be Adam Lowry leading the charge for the Winnipeg Jets. I was vocal about that on social media. I was vocal about that on the post-game show after Game 4. To me,
Adam Lowry mentioned it to me, actually. I was in the locker room. He said, can you tell Drew to back off of me a little bit?
I totally understand.
I'm reading his stuff, and it's kind of hurtful.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't hurtful. I wasn't rude. I'm never rude.
I'm joking. Well, Drew, the whole conversation was a joke.
I know the conversation was a joke, but I don't want people to think that I'm a rude person. Online or anything.
But getting back to what you said though before, we've talked about throughout the hour and 20 minutes or so that we've been doing the show, guys. We've been talking about how the team needs to be better. And Adam Lowry is the leader of the team.
My point.
Right? So that's what we're talking about here. Yes. It's not Drew picking on Adam Lowry. Look, Adam Lowry.
No, it's me identifying a player that needs to step up.
Yes.
Josh
and he would tell you that himself. Did he not talk about that, Dave, earlier this week? Right, guys? It's not like the Jets are shying away from how they played in St. Louis.
Right.
They all know it. We just talked about Cole Perfetti and Nino Niederreiter spoke to the media. Dave M was there. And they acknowledge that they have to be better. And it's not just one, it's not like Cole Perfetti was saying, oh, our line's going to be better. And then everybody else doesn't necessarily have to be better. That's not what he's saying, right? We know that. It starts in net with Connor Hellebuck. There's a lot of areas where they have to be better. But I look at it another way, guys, with the 2 days off between games. I think you have the ability to change the narrative maybe a little bit more than you would if
a mental reset.
Exactly. And it's a best of 3 series. I think the Jets are looking at this like it's a whole new series, and you forget about you obviously learn from.
Well, that goes to my point that I asked Murat about. 4 games in, it's a best of 3. Haven't really played very well. Right. They've had spurts, they've had good periods, but by and large, I would say that St. Louis has been the better of the 2 teams through the first 4 games.
Put it this way, Drew: the Blues could easily be up 3-1 at this point.
No question. I mean, they were up by a goal in the back half of the 3rd period in Game 1. And Game 2 was equally close at that point in time. It's the Jets who are, to some extent, I think. And Jim Montgomery said this post game after Game 4. He said, we sort of felt that we deserved better in Games 1 and 2, and we didn't get the results. We played better in Games 3 and 4, and we got the results, to tie the series up, Dave.
Yeah, look, I mean, at the end of the day, we know this group collectively has more to give, and we know that they have to have a better effort. You have to start from the time puck drops. That's what he's saying too. He is saying the exact same thing. So there you go.
Enjoy the game, guys.
You got a lot of folks who are excited here. They're heading to the game. Puck drop I'd say in 30 minutes, but that's not realistic.
It's like 8:52.
Yeah, the warm up is in about 35 minutes, 40 minutes. We'll see. But no, look, there's a lot of excitement. I mean, look, it's hard to say we know what's going to happen because we don't know what's going to happen. We have watched. We've spent a lot of time paying attention to this team throughout the course of this year. again, they're saying the right things. They've all kind of owned what they know went wrong in the last couple of games. But at the end of the day, I think, Drew, you are right. This team knows that there is a lot more to give. I think we're going to see it in tonight's game because, as Scott O'Neill said, I think after game one, you have nothing to lose. You have everything, and you have everything to win. So ultimately, you have to put it all out there for tonight's game. Tonight, you have to treat tonight's game like it is a must-win game.
Yep.
And if you do, then you can worry about what you got left in the tank for game 6 on Friday tomorrow. Because realistically, they're not going to skate anyways tomorrow. They're just going to get on a plane and go to St. Louis. So ultimately, end of the day, you got to go out there and treat this like it is game 7.
I would agree with what Dave Manouk said. We'll talk about everything that happens in tonight's Game 5 right around 11:30 or so, depending on if there's overtime or not, on the Illegal Curve post-game show, covering Game 5 in its entirety between the Blues and the Winnipeg Jets. Puck drop, allegedly 30 minutes from now. It's going to be a few minutes beyond that, but that's okay.
I hope it is, because we have to drive home now.
That's what I'm saying. Big thank you to everybody who joined us here at City Place for this edition of the Illegal Curve pregame show, and a big thank you to, of course, everybody who joined us online. We remind everybody, join us later tonight for the Illegal Curve postgame show. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn your notifications on so that way you get alerted each and every time we go live here on the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Big thank you to our friends here at City Place for their support of the Illegal Curve pregame show. Big thank you to all of our sponsors: Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Play Now, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, Seagram's, and the 2025 Rady JCC Sports Dinner with featured speakers, Vikings legends Chris Carter and John Randall. If you haven't already done so, be sure to support our sponsors because they make this show possible. The other person who makes this show possible, producer Tim. He gets all the credit for making us sound good, making us be apparent and visible here at City Place, and for everybody joining us at home as well. Thanks to Tim, of course, for the great job that he does.
And thanks to everybody who comes and says hello. We always appreciate that. We met some people that we sometimes see online, but it's nice for whenever you are, if you're in the building or close to, come say hello. We always appreciate that. And hopefully next show, if there is a next show on Sunday, we'll have pucks, but we'll focus on that after tonight.
We'll deal with one game at a time. We'll look forward to the post-game show later on tonight as well. For Dave Manouk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I am your host, Drew Mandel. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. This has been the Illegal Curve pregame show. Enjoy Game 5 between the Jets and the Blues, and we'll see you in a few hours' time for the Illegal Curve post-game show.
Just like a racehorse.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.